Winds of Change is a commonly misunderstood card, so let's talk about it. Winds of Change is a sorcery from Legends that costs a single red mana. All players shuffle their hands into their libraries and then draw the same number of cards they originally held. Alright, I'm gonna do things a little differently today. So as you probably know, I'm pretty new to this whole YouTube thing, and frankly, I'm not great at it. Despite that, I have been growing in popularity at a reasonable rate, and I even had a viral video, which is pretty cool. The point I'm trying to make here is that it has been a really interesting experience interacting with commentators. Most of my experience has been wonderful. I've learned a lot and often get corrected on some of the mistakes I've made. I genuinely appreciate all of you for that. It's made this endeavor all the more enjoyable. And like any public forum, sometimes I get some rude and miserable people, which is to be expected. But I was kinda ill-prepared for the occasional vitriol I will get in my comments. Generally, people are really cool and respectful, and it just goes to show how passionate people are about this game because some of my opinions have been taken pretty bad. Now, I'm not trying to dogpile on anyone or make any specific examples because I don't want people to get harassed for having opinions, but in one of these exchanges, I was hit by a line of text that utterly bamboozled me. It basically boiled down to saying Winds of Change is card advantage, and I was stupid for saying that it isn't. Now, I don't disagree that I'm stupid. Plenty of evidence in my life to point to that conclusion. But Winds of Change is not card advantage, and today we're going to talk about why it isn't. I suppose the reasonable place to start is, what the fuck is card advantage anyway? Card advantage, in its most basic sense, is the number of cards you have available compared to your opponent. It's card advantage for you if an action has an effect of raising the number of cards you have access to, or lowering the number of cards your opponent has access to. So card advantage is a pretty simple concept, but there are some nuances that make it a little confusing. In my opinion, from what I've seen, the most confusing part of card advantage is that many cards that say draw a card are not card advantage, and plenty of cards that have nothing to do with drawing a card are card advantage. That might be confusing, but we'll go into some examples. So, at the start of a game of Magic, both players shuffle their deck and draw 7 cards. There is no card advantage for either player at this point. Player 1 doesn't draw a card these days, so assuming they play a land and a 1-drop creature, card advantage hasn't actually changed. Both players have the same number of cards. Player 1 has 2 cards deployed, but both players theoretically have equal resources. Cards aren't equal in strength, so one player is bound to have an advantage, but it isn't an advantage in the number of cards. Player 2 will draw a card, which is card advantage, but it's not really the part we're focusing on, so we'll just move on to player 1's second turn, and let's say during player 1's second turn they cast Hymn to Torak. That's a card advantage play. Player 1 has spent a card to discard 2 of player 2's cards. Both players have drawn 1 card at this point, so player 1 is at 7 cards available and player 2 is at 6 cards available. That's card advantage. Let's wipe the example from before and put both players at parity. So card advantage is equal, and then player 1 casts Ancestral Recall. If, for some reason, they targeted player 2 with Ancestral Recall, it would be a +4 advantage to player 2, since player 1 used the card, and player 2 drew 3 cards for free. Now, unless player 2 only had 2 cards in their library, this is unlikely to be a smart play, but I think it's a good way of showing off card advantage. Now, if player 1 was a little bit smarter with their Ancestral Recall and cast it on themselves, it would only be a +2 card advantage, because they spent a resource which replaced itself and got 2 new resources. It's also important to remember that permanents on the field are a part of card advantage as well. A token generator, for example, can be card advantage as it's making you creatures without spending the resources of a card. A card like Ashes to Ashes is also sort of card advantage, as you can remove 2 of your opponent's permanents for the cost of a card and some life. That puts them -1 in card advantage. Okay, so today's video is about Winds of Change, and we're working our way there, but I do have one more example I want to talk about. Wheel of Fortune is a very interesting example here because a card like this can absolutely be card advantage, but cards like Wheel of Fortune do kind of muddy the water a bit. So Wheel of Fortune draws all players 7 cards after they discard their hand. The best time to use Wheel of Fortune in most situations is when you have 1 card in hand and they have 7. That can be a form of card advantage because they will discard resources and then you'll both go to 7. It seems like card parity, but if they aren't a graveyard deck, they had to expel potentially useful resources while you did not. But what if you both have no cards in hand after you cast the wheel? Is it still card advantage? This is where it gets a bit tricky because it isn't like global card advantage. You didn't shift who has access to more resources, but you did increase the amount of resources you have access to. So it is card advantage in a way, but it didn't shift who has advantage in the number of resources they have access to, so it also kind of isn't card advantage. Does that make sense? Anyway, Winds of Change is not card advantage. It's a forced mulligan. I want to stress that I think Winds of Change is a really good card and you can do some funky things with it. I think it's especially underrated in old school decks that have like a combo or a silver bullet they need to get to. It's super good at digging a bit deeper into your deck, but it actually puts you at -1 in card advantage. When you cast Winds of Change, you have to put it in the graveyard because you used it. Then it checks the number of cards in your hand, which would be 1 less than it was before you cast the Winds of Change. Then you shuffle those cards back and draw the same number of cards. How the fuck does that increase the number of cards you have access to? It's literally just a mulligan. Draw a new hand at -1 because you had to put 1 at the bottom. This card is still cool and underrated in my opinion, and it wheels your opponent, which is an interesting tactic because it might be the best thing you could have done to win that game or the worst possible decision, depending on what their hand was and what it is now. I think effects like this are cool and interesting, but I also don't like getting told I'm stupid and don't know anything about Magic by someone who would call Winds of Change card advantage. This is like a free mulligan, right? Well, not even a free mulligan because you have to pay a card and mana for it. It is pretty funny with Niv Mizzet Parun though. Like, I don't think this is a bad card, but I do not think you should call this card advantage. I guess I should also take this point to say that I am capable of being wrong and my knowledge is definitely not flawless. So don't take everything I say at face value. I do try to dictate my speech in a way that makes it obvious when I'm stating something as like a fact or when I'm expressing an opinion. I'm also not trying to discourage people from commenting and sharing their experience. Hell, I don't even particularly care if you're a bit snippy with it. But please don't come into my comments and confidently declare that Winds of Change is card advantage because it has the word draw on it. You fucking simpleton. That was mean. I should cut that. I'm not going to. I'd like to hear what you all have to say about Winds of Change though. My main point here is that you can call Winds of Change card selection, and it can definitely be strong. But there is no way to use just this card to increase the number of cards you have access to relative to your opponent. Let's talk about the art. Winds of Change was originally illustrated by Justin Hampton, and I quite like this art. I'm generally not a huge fan of Justin's work in most situations, and even this one is pretty low on my list when you compare it to all the art, but I do think this is one of his better pieces. And I don't think Justin is bad at art, it's just not my preferred style in most instances. The shading and detailing around the cow skull is absolutely phenomenal though. Still, we do have a few arts to talk about, so let's move on, because I'm not really that passionate about this one. In 5th edition, Winds of Change got new art by Blackie De Rio, and this one is pretty fucking cool. It's a little on the nose to illustrate a weather vane for Winds of Change, but I don't hate it. I think this might be my favorite art for Winds of Change. There's something about the roughness of the style that speaks to me, but this looks like an art you'd see in Alpha, and I love it so much just for that. The color choices and textures in this painting are just so cool. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this one, but let's check out this art from Portal. This version was illustrated by Adam Rex, and this is another fun interpretation of the card. It's probably really hard to figure out how to draw wind. The glow radiating from the center perspective is super cool on this one, and this is just another really cool technique. It's rare that you can get a sense of the texture but this art and the last one both have textures that pop out to me, and I think that's really cool. Next, we have this secret layer illustrated by Kozindan, and this one is super cool. It's a very classic Japanese styling and a great story for the card. I really like this one. This is one of those arts that I think would be really cool to see in an old border. Still, I don't have too much to say about this one, so let's move on to Spider-Man! Oh no, the symbiote got him. This was illustrated by Ron Frenz and Klaus Janson, and it's really well executed in my opinion. I think if you like Spider-Man and like looking at pictures of Spider-Man while you play Magic, you will like this version of Winds of Change. And if you do not like looking at pictures of Spider-Man while you play Magic, you might not like it so much. But yeah, Winds of Change. I like this card. I think it's pretty powerful without being brutally strong, and I think it helps make certain playstyles a tad more consistent. But it is not card advantage, it's card selection. But as with every card and video, I'm excited to hear what you guys think. It's been harder to keep up and respond with every comment like I try to, but I am still reading them all and I will likely get to them within a day or two. I guess I would also like to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. It means so much to me, and I'm glad to spend so much time talking Magic with so many cool people from different perspectives. As always, you can like the video if you liked it, you can subscribe if you give a shit, but either way, I hope you have a magical day. Thank you for watching.